There's the acute outburst of anger, the one that you feel the heat rise in your body, in your face, right? And you need to expel energy, so you hit or you throw or you yell. There is also state anger. In other words, it's your baseline. You've gone back to a neutral, but if something happens, you go into anger. It's your default state to fall into. And those are really dangerous because those are the ones that wind up having devastating effects on the immune system, on the hormones, on your behaviors, exactly like we described previously.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we all know someone who's negative, right, or who has a tendency to be negative. And that can be just as poisonous because every emotion has a vibration to it, an electromagnetic frequency to it. In fact, everything in nature, everything in our world, every pill, every material, every emotion, every thought has an electromagnetic signature. This is not woo-woo science now. This is demonstrated. As you know, I'm the director of functional and longevity medicine at a brain center in Sydney. And what we do there is connector mapping of the brain and then transcranial magnetic stimulation to induce neuroplasticity. Now, all that is just fancy words saying I use electromagnetic fields to affect change in a biological structure. And so I'm very interested in electromagnetic fields, and there is a company that I've been following quite closely since 2019 called Emulate Therapeutics. They're in the US, and it's because I came across this company when I was at a brain tumor summit at a conventional hospital in New York in 2019.
Yeah.
And one of the issues that they're tackling is brain tumors because notoriously medications don't cross the blood-brain barrier, which is the main issue with trying to treat brain tumors. And what this company has done is actually taken the electromagnetic frequency signature of the drug, encoded it, put a coronet on patients, which they wear for 23 hours a day, and it spits out the electromagnetic frequency to have the drug's effect on the brain. And they just finished their pilot studies at a university in Melbourne, actually, maybe a couple of years ago. And so I'm following them because this is the next phase of medicine, right? Anyway, so when you are a person where your baseline is a negative emotion, right? And I use inverted commas because I think we're too willing and ready to slap the word positive and negative on emotions, on behaviors. Some of those emotions or behaviors can actually be quite helpful in certain situations, right? And then in other situations, they're maladaptive. So we have to be very careful with how we label these things. But anyway,
I agree. I often use the word uncomfortable because it's that uncomfortability that people struggle with versus that, sometimes we need to be sad, of course. Sometimes we should feel anger.
Exactly.
And, denying that is actually taking us to the place that we're talking about. So it's important that we accept those emotions, even if they are uncomfortable for us.
Right. And if we know that, as per our previous example, that anger has a certain effect on your physiology, then you have to imagine that if that is kind of like a baseline state, then physiologically things are going to change in line. Because if you want to go back to some basics, because I totally agree with you, right? Going back to basics is super helpful. And it's super helpful for me in trying to get my head around this, right? And I'm still learning.
Me too.
All these
We're all still learning.
All these states, all these emotions, all these thoughts, they actually are just signals to your body about resource allocation. Where are you going to put your resources to minute by minute? So if you're angry and you go into that fight flight from an evolutionary perspective, it's because there was a threat and you had to face that threat, whether it was to fight it, to run from it, and then later on it became to negotiate with it, to discuss, right? But your body had to allocate resources. Sugar would be an obvious thing, but energy would be another. And when it's reallocating resources to help you deal with this threat, this nebulous threat, whatever that threat was, then it's taking resources from other things which may have needed it. That includes repair, regeneration, So think about it from a resource allocation perspective. And if you're always sucking resources from organs or from cells that need it for just general wear tear purposes, and you're squirreling it away to this threat that never seems to be gotten on top of, never seems to disappear, never seems to be quelled, then your body gets exhausted. But its primary function is survival for you. So it will keep giving those resources to your state of preparedness. Back in the day, it was so that you could run or fight, chuck a spear, something like that. Now it's so that you can yell at the waitress at Cheesecake Factory, right? But it's this constant allocation of resources to your state of needing to be ready to pounce, to yell, to punch. And that will exhaust any system over time.